of testimony have informed the committee's work sessions. The Criminal Justice and Public Safety Committee held 10 sessions, each a half day, dealing with both of them those days. 4 work sessions were dedicated to corrections and 4 to public safety. 1 work session was dedicated solely to the Maine Fire Protection and 1 to the Maine Emergency Management Agency. We would like to say that it wasn't a vote, but this discussion about substance use disorder and the need for treatment in the community, we spent a lot of time on that. We kept going back to that. So this paragraph is very important. There is strong support among all the members, or pretty much all the members. I think there was a unanimous vote. Strong support for substance use disorder treatment was shown in a unanimous vote of Criminal Justice and Public Safety Committee after a motion by Representative Warren and seconded by myself. The Criminal Justice and Public Safety Committee heard in February from Gordon Smith, the governor's director of opioid response, that Maine lacks medically supervised withdrawal services in the community and other treatment and recovery services for both youth and adults suffering from substance use disorder. Our neighbors continue to suffer from this disorder, get arrested, are incarcerated, and die because of Maine does not provide substantial services in the substance use disorder realm. The Criminal Justice Committee, the Criminal Justice and Public Safety Committee strongly requests that the AFA committee consult with Gordon Smith about specific needs across the state and add sufficient funding to address these needs in the biennial budget. I will turn it over to Representative Warren.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think I'll skip currently the Department of Corrections, which you see at the top of page 2. And I'll just go directly to the Department of Public Safety because it flows out of what Senator DeChambeau just shared with all of you, that we in the Criminal Justice Public Safety Committee took a unanimous vote, really asking the AFA to please try to fund this year treatment services for our friends and neighbors who continue to die from substance use disorder. So lots of that conversation took place during our discussions of the Department of Public Safety budget. We have one little section to finish on the Department of Public Safety budget, which we'll be doing this afternoon, right after we meet with you, and I suspect we'll finish that portion. But a couple of things of note, in addition to approving all of the governor's initiatives in Department of Public Safety, we made 2 motions. One having to do with the Maine Drug Enforcement Agency. It was a motion made to take 50% of the funding from the Maine Drug Enforcement Agency lines over the next 2 years and move it into support for medically managed withdrawal for youth and adults and residential treatment. This was not a unanimous vote, as the earlier one was. This was 6 members supported this motion and 7 opposed it. And we talked a lot about the fact that while we don't have services for folks who are voluntarily trying to get help, it seems a little perverse to continue to put money into ways to go out and incarcerate, arrest and incarcerate people for having substance use disorder when we have to turn them away when they want help. So I'm sure there'll be questions about that. I'm happy to answer them. That was that motion. The second motion, also in the Department of Public Safety, we've spent a lot of time talking about the computer crime lab. And as you all know on AFA, and we all know on criminal justice and public safety, the computer crime lab in the Department of Public Safety has a very, very large backlog. We heard from Lieutenant Ireland this morning, and he said that even if the complaints stopped today, if there was not an additional complaint dealing with child sexual abuse, child pornography, etc., it would take them 2 to 3 years to catch up with their backlog. He also stated to us that he knows that children are in danger, and if we can't respond, they'll still be in danger tonight. This is something we've continued to know for a very long time. We still haven't funded the positions that they need. The backlog grows each day. What we, those of us who supported this motion, was to take money away, divest from the main information analysis center, whereby many of you have participated in informational sessions trying to get an understanding of how this does provide public safety. Take that funding and fund the crime lab where we know we need help. That was supported by 5 members and opposed by 8 members. So as I said, we'll finish the Department of Public Safety this afternoon. To go back to the Department of Corrections, which starts at the top of page 2, as you all heard along with us, we were here for the public hearing. And at that time, Commissioner Liberty informed us, shared with all of us together, that he would be presenting a plan for juvenile justice services. We still don't have a budget for that new plan. I don't know if they've presented that plan to you all yet. Okay, so you haven't seen the plan. It's referred to as by the department as a strategic plan. It'll be interesting if you see it as a strategic plan. It's a there's some proposals for what they might change. There are no dollar figures attached to it. And we've been trying to get information as to when we might see a budget related to juvenile justice. We've heard it could come in the Chief Executive's change package, which may be in May. We strongly would like to ask that we're given another chance to have a hearing once we get that budget and report back to you all. I think you all know that the members of our committee have worked for years on juvenile justice. We've spent hours on individual task forces, and we'd really like to have a say in reporting back on that new plan and that budget. So we're doing a lot of work around the Department of Corrections. We'll be back to that budget as well, but we really are not prepared to sign off other than I personally would have to make a motion to vote against a budget that proposes $37 million over the next 2 years, 175 staff members for 28 youth. Just a reminder to all of you, that is a cost of over $660,000 per year per child. I hope we're going to end that this year. So we aren't prepared to take a vote on that until we see their proposal as a budget document. The last 2 are pretty straightforward: the Maine Fire Protection Services Commission and the Maine Emergency Management Agency. And so I'll leave those to you to peruse, and that's all I have for you. Thank you.
Thank you both chairs for that overview and review of what you sent back to us. I guess I would open it now to questions from members of appropriations. If there are any questions for the two chairs on the substance of what we just heard, this would be a great time to just have that discussion. Looks like Representative Corey has his hand up.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think that, when I remember the article sort of regarding MIAC that came out last year, the Main Information Analysis Center, which is a part of the fusion centers, which are sort of joint ventures between DPS and the FBI. And, I definitely, had some questions about some of the things that they're doing there and everything. Sort of my mindset started to change a little bit surrounding MIAC in the wake of January 6th and what happened in Washington. And my understanding is that these fusion centers actually had information that should have been acted upon when that happened. There's articles up on the web about this. I was just reading about one in the Wall Street Journal. So I'm a huge fan of the Computer Crimes Unit, and having sat on the Criminal Justice and Public Safety Committee for 4 years, I understand that we need resources there. I've visited the place. I've seen the work they do. They're very scary people in the world, and they're definitely identifying the scariest people that we have living amongst us. I think the big question I have here, not knowing enough about MIAC's budget, are we talking about completely defunding MIAC? If we're talking about $650,765 in each year, or are we talking about reducing their budget? And just what do those impacts look like? Are we going to be able to catch things like January 6th, which was a horrible thing, and we can all sort of acknowledge that? Or are we going to go without this kind of data and information? Thank you.
So I think that the nut of that question is what would be the impact if we moved this number over from MIAC over to computer crimes? What percentage of the MIAC's budget is this?
Thank you, Senator Breen. We only made a motion to move the general fund money. So this is strictly state general fund money. There is more money, federal money, and some special revenue services. But this is just general fund money for each year. And
Okay.
Did you want me to weigh in on the second part of the question, or?
I think just the percentage. I think that was the nut of the question.
Okay.
Thank you. Was that Representative Corey? Was that correct?
I'd really like to know how this impacts our information gathering. That's a significant, portion of money. We're kind of talking about separating ourselves from, I'm guessing, partnership with the federal government on this and having the federal government completely pay for it. So, like I said, I have my own questions about this organization and everything else, but, this seems, I'm just curious what the impacts are, the perceived impacts.
I think that part of, oh, I'm sorry.
First of all, I'm sure we could ask MIAC the same question, but if we want to hear from them, but in the meantime, Representative Warren, you can give your take on it.
Thank you, Senator Breen. Thank you, Representative Corey, for the question. And I know you were part of hours and hours of questioning with us, where we really were trying, I think we did that for a couple of days, we were trying to get a sense of how does this money make Mainers safer? And we asked that question in about 72,000 different ways. And what we got for an answer over and over was what MIAC doesn't do. right? Because we kept, and you remember this, I know you do, we asked it many ways. And what we continue to know is what MIAC doesn't do. From my perspective, I would say that what happened on January 6th, putting all of this money in MIAC didn't help us. It didn't change that. And we still don't have a sense of how putting this money here does keep us safer. So if I could answer the question, and we again this year have asked many of the same questions to Commissioner Sawchuk of, give us, how can we have a sense of if this is a good investment, right? If we think about these dollars, can you give us examples of what you've done, or how does this make Mainers safer? It's like trying to grab smoke. There's still, to my way of thinking, there's not a way that it's measured. There's a lot of things that we think we do. There's a lot of things we hope we do. They review Facebook and open source. And so I'll stop there, but for personally, I can't assure Mainers that spending this money makes them safer. And I'm still waiting for an example of how it does.
Thank you, Representative Warren. I see Representative Cloutier has had her hand up, Representative Pickett, and then Representative Costain.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to the Criminal Justice Committee for joining us today. So I have a lot of questions, but I don't, they're so big that I don't know how to ask them. And so I guess I'm just going to make a statement, and then we can figure out what the questions are from there, I guess. So this being my first term on appropriations, this report back was significantly different from all the other report backs that we've received. It was, in some ways, it was much less detailed, and I think raised some much bigger questions. And so being that AFA is not a policy committee, and being that this is absolutely not my wheelhouse, and I would not have any idea how to create policy around any of the recommendations that you've included, I just want to voice that I would 100% support you coming back once we have this report back from the Department of Corrections on the juvenile justice policy. I think that would be extremely helpful. And I completely understand not wanting to weigh in on that until you have that new policy in front of you. And then also just, I think that there's, we can say that we want to, move money to different places, but I wouldn't know the first step to take to do that. And so I hope that this is kind of part of maybe an ongoing conversation that we can have regarding all of the things that you've laid out in this 2-page report back.
Okay. Thanks, Representative Cloutier. Next is Representative Pickett, and then Representative Costain.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. In reference to the MIAC and the federal money that would disappear feasibly, from what my understanding was from questioning the commissioner after we had when we had the conversation and we were talking about these things, if we were to take that kind of money away from MIAC, that would feasibly eliminate the program. At least that's the impression I got. That's something that you would want to certainly dig in with the commissioner when you have the opportunity to ask him. But it seems to me, with all the general fund money going, the state money going, and just federal money in there, and I'm not sure. It seems to me I heard something about some type of a federal match, but I'm not really sure. But I think that's something you'll want to dig into a little deeper. And the only other thing I would say is that we're not there's those of us on the committee that voted on the side not to go along with these 2 motions. We're not opposed to the idea. We just were opposed to the funding mechanism of how we go about doing it. We did not want to see funding being taken from MDEA in one instance, and also funds being taken from the MIAC. We wanted to look deeper and see if there was other areas of money within the budget that would actually, that is already there, like possibly vacant but not filled positions, those kind of things like that, and dig. But we're on the same page as far as what we want to do. We're just not on the same page with the funding mechanism. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you for clarifying that, Representative Pickett. Appreciate it. Representative Costain?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So on the same line as Representative Pickett, during this testimony that day when Representative Warren made that motion, I was in contact with Sergeant, actually Major Scott from the State Police, and he asked me, or said two comments that I think are very important. One is, he said, if we take that money from MIAC, what are we supposed to do? Close MIAC. So that's the first thing he said. Second thing he said to me was, that would be detrimental to the public safety statewide for the state of Maine. So I think that's a very important factor too. I agree 100% with Representative Warren. We need to do something with the drug issues that we have. We need to find the money somewhere, but I do not agree with the fact that the money is going to come out of MIAC or out of the drug unit. Thank you.
Understood. Thank you. Looks like Representative Peirce and then Representative Lookner.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm curious about, I appreciate that you're articulating that you're in support of this, just where the funds were coming from. And I'm wondering if anyone on the committee or one of the chairs could help me understand, did you have conversations about different sources of revenue on these, or how did it come about where you came down to these decisions and these particular votes?
Representative Warren, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We've talked for a lot of years together, because many of us have been on this committee for a long time, and we miss Representative Corey, just so I can say that, but we've talked for a long time about the need for funding for treatment and the need for funding for withdrawal sites and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But for some reason, it keeps not happening. And I think last month, when Gordon Smith came to our committee and shared that we still didn't have medically managed withdrawal sites, right? We have 2 for the entire state. Milestone in Portland, which now we know is going to be temporarily closing, and we have 1 up in Bangor. We have none for youth. And the term that he used was, the only way you can get residential treatment for substance use disorder in Maine is if you're wealthy. I think that was a real shocker for us. And we spent a lot of time talking about the fact that we still weren't funding this treatment when we just saw the highest amount of overdose deaths we've ever seen in the state. And even in the month of January, 58 of our friends and neighbors and family members in Maine died of an overdose, 58 in 1 month. We had to start, or I felt like, and if obviously some of my colleagues agreed, that if we couldn't fund it with other money, maybe we needed to fund it from within the same department. In a decade, we have spent $47 million on the Maine Drug Enforcement Agency. $47 million. You can still get any drug you want, any place in Maine, any time of day. And we have now lost, in those 10 years, to overdoses, more than my entire city of Hollowell. At last count, the last time I looked at the data, we have lost 3,061 Mainers in those 10 years, while we've spent $47 million on the Maine Drug Enforcement Agency, which again goes out and arrests people, locks them up, we all pay for it together, lets them out. See, we're kind of in a cycle. So until we actually give people treatment when they come in and say, please help me today, my buddy is using the same supply and he died last night, I need help. Until we can help them, how can we as moral people continue to fund this trap? That's where the thinking came from. So I appreciate the question. If we had unlimited money in Maine, if we could just spend budget money on whatever we wanted, we wouldn't be taking these really tough votes, really tough motions to move money around. But we're watching our friends and family die, and we want them to get help.
I see Representative Lookner, and then Senator Searway, and then back to Representative Corey.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and Representative Warren just touched on a lot of the points that I wanted to speak to. But, generally, I think what was really compelling to me about the need to fund the computer crimes unit was they were really able to quantify the work that they've accomplished and how much they have in front of them and how underfunded and under-resourced they are. MIAC and DPS was not able to do the same for MIAC. So that, to me, they weren't able to quantify and show us, here's the work we've done, here are the rests that it's led to, here's how much safer we could be with that funding. So that was one really compelling thing. And the other thing that I wanted to speak to with MDEA, they're very keen to talk about the amount of weight of drugs they've removed from the streets. In 2020 specifically, but they weren't able to speak to the number of overdose deaths that they've prevented because, we had record overdose deaths in 2020, over 500. So those were two things that really spoke to me. That's why I supported both measures. And, we have to think not just in terms of, is this stuff making us safer? Is it keeping the people of Maine from engaging in these, falling into these behaviors? And, my thoughts when it comes to both MIAC and MDEA is not really, it's not making us a hell of a lot safer. So let's look at something else.
Thank you, Representative Lookner. Senator Searway, and then Representative Corey.
Thank you, Madam. And thank you for having us over here to talk about. I specifically, Cody, stand up and speak about MIAC and all. And he explained the importance of how important they are for public safety, and without it, we'd be defenseless. On the eradication of drugs, but not just that. It's about public safety in many aspects of intelligence of what's going on, and so I don't think that taking that away is going to solve the issue. I've been on the task force, the opioid, for quite a few years now, 3 or 4 years now, with Gordon Smith. Been working hard and diligently, and I think we realize that there's, and even from Judge Stokes' comments, that we just do not have the resources, and that would help tremendously of getting the individuals out of the jail system and getting them on the right track if we had a resource center for recovery and treatment. And I agree 100% on that part. Stripping what we have already is not going to be the answer. I think if there's other avenues of finding the financial resources to do it. I mean, we had AmHigh, which Health Reach, we had New Directions, we had many, Seton Hospital was a program. There was a lot of good programs we used to have, not have them. And robbing Peter to pay Paul is not the way to do it. I think if we can find the resources, I know there's been big pushes in the federal end, and also we've been really trying to get it on the state end. I think that if we can look at that, I do think that there was a lot of questions on the personnel money issue for our budget for the DOC. And there was a few places where we thought maybe there could be some cuts. But on the juvenile system, they do have a new venture that they want to put outreach and get them out of the jail system. And they had a boy and a girls set up, and it's a good start. And I was pretty excited about that. And so I think that's a good thing. So anyway, I just wanted that taking away is not going to be the answer on that. I just think it's just adding.
Thank you, Senator Searway. Appreciate it.
Yep.
Back to Representative Corey and then Representative Pickett.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think that where I'm probably sort of somewhat confused here is that as I read through these two narratives about sort of what happened in committee, I feel like the information I'm getting from the chair is from the minority perspective on each one of these votes, as opposed to what the majority perspective is on each one of these votes. So I'd really like to hear from the majority on each one of these votes about why they voted the way they voted. I'd also like to know, just as I asked about MIAC, you know, and just what that means in terms of that budget, when we're talking about $3.3 million decreases per year from the MDEA budget, how large a section of that budget is that? I don't have that budget sitting in front of me. I could go get my binder in the back room and actually take a look at that. But are we talking about defunding, you know, this agency? Those seem to be pretty significant budget decreases there. And having had somebody in my own family die of an opioid overdose, you know, in the last 5 years, I do have, you know, an incredibly large interest in seeing, you know, us spend more money on this, especially considering the impacts that we've seen this year through the pandemic and everything. And I did read that same article about Milestone closing its doors for right now. So I'm very concerned about that. But I just, like I said, I need to understand what these impacts mean, what these decreases are. And like I said, I'd like to hear the majority perspective on this, not the minority perspective. Thank you.
Representative Pickett and then Senator DeChambeau.
Thank you, Madam Chair. First, what I'd like to say is that I was on the majority vote, which was the vote to not pass the motion. I think I spoke to that first time that I did speak, and that was the funding mechanism was the issue that caused most of us that made that vote go the way that did, and how we went about doing that. But the whole problem is here. The thing for me is this, going back to the question I believe that Representative Pierce asked originally here on this segment is, you know, did we talk about funding? Did we talk about how can we come up with a way of being able to do something here and make a difference? And I think we're talking about something that's way larger than any of one committee in this legislature. And we're talking about something that is very complex, but at the same time is something that is very deadly and something that needs to be addressed. And we need to all as a legislature embrace this. And we need to come up with creative ways of how we can do things to try to fund things. But I think we have different ways of going about it, because some would like to see law enforcement disappear out of the equation. I think law enforcement is something that really needs to be involved in it. And where MDEA comes into that is that they're not out and they're not charging people that are users and stuff of that. They're out trying to get this poison that comes into the state before it gets here and trying to stop the source of it. That's what their job is. And they brought a lot of statistics to us of how they have done that in the past. We also need to have places for treatment. We need to have recovery homes that we have, and I heard countless hours in the last session of people come in here talking about how these recovery houses have meant such a difference in their life and how they became a unit and a family within the other people there and stuff. And we need to be doing something in that direction. We need to have treatment for these people. I sat on the subcommittee commission, and so I've heard a lot of this from both sides, and I understand the problem, and I understand what we need to do, because we do have a crisis, an opioid crisis in our state. We do. But we also have one other leg that we need to have in it too. And I think it kind of bookends between the law enforcement and the other two things, and that is employment. We need to find out from the business community out here how we can get businesses that are willing to take on people that have gone through this program and went into treatment and get into recovery houses and have jobs waiting for them to come out, because nothing helps a person in a situation like this anymore. And I have people in my own family that have had a problem with this, to have some self-worth of being employed. And so it's a much bigger problem than one we're going to be able to solve in criminal justice. I want the word to get out that if we say there's a problem, and I think we all believe that, it's time now to put action with the words. And so, I mean, we're just trying to get the message out to you folks on AFA that we'll do anything we can do to find ways that we can find funding in our budget, but we're not gonna take it. In my side here, we're not going to take things that we think are going to be more detrimental than good to go ahead and fund that. And that's pretty much where I'm coming from. Thank you very much, ma'am.
Thank you, Representative Pickett. Senator DeChambeau?
Thank you. It's a little difficult for me to be a retired social worker of 43 years when your job is to be a problem solver, and I can't solve this problem. I am in the majority that opposed both suggestions, motions on where to get money and where to reallocate the money. I want to speak first. I don't disagree, and we all voted unanimously that we need substance abuse treatment in the community and not rely on institutions. So in one hand, you vote unanimously that that's what you want. And the other hand is, where do you get the money? I think I'm pretty much with Representative Pickett and some others that I don't know how to look inward to the Department of Corrections and public safety. Public safety, maybe a little bit, but treatment, especially in prisons. First of all, Representative Warren talks about addicts on the street wanting treatment. The addicts in the prison are not the ones that I know that have been walking on the streets asking for treatment per se. What brought them to the correctional facility was breaking the law. One thing about the Department of Corrections, they do not invite people into the prison. The door, they are knocking at the door through the courts, through conviction, and the door gets open and they're inside that facility. To use the money that the facilities need or the whole Department of Corrections needs to then apply it to the community is something that I couldn't compromise with. The other one with MIAC, one of the bills, not the bills, but yes, there was a bill, we even heard it today, is to hire more computer crimes in the computer crimes unit, more staff. And that was one of the motions to take that MIAC. I stopped short of that because you will see that the Commissioner of Public Safety has not asked for those positions, even though there's a perception and a need for more staff there. Other than Commissioner Sawchuk, I have not been discussing MIAC with any other state entities or state personnel. However, I have been discussing it with the 6 towns, or I should say 4 towns, that have chief law enforcement officers, and that includes also the sheriffs. And as members, if you want to know if MIAC works for you in your county, your town, your district, I would urge you to give a call to any leading law enforcement officer. That person, usually it's a police chief or the sheriff, that does receive the information from MIAC, and you ask them if it helps them. I will tell you that the first answer I got from a police chief was, oh my God, we get those every day. What they're talking about is they get a report. Some applies to them, some doesn't. But I have heard stories that they were able to stop some crimes, some very serious crimes, because of the information they received. And it comes from Homeland Security, from Washington, to it's a centralized depository of information. And those 4 people that work in that department vet it out. Is the domestic terrorist coming into Waterville? Is it coming into Starks, Maine? Is it legit? And they vet it out, and then they give it to that law enforcement agency in that area. So those are the kinds of things I wanted to mention. I believed MIAC, I'd have to look at my notes. The 800,000 is something like 700,000 from the general fund, and I think only about, and I bet Representative Warren knows this better than I do, 100,000 from the federal government. So I just felt, I'm glad that I voted in strong support of treatment, but I didn't think it should be taken by any law enforcement agency who also have a job to protect us.
Thank you, Senator DeChambeau. I appreciate it. And I think I heard Representative Warren say that the number is only for general fund. There's no federal funding. Is that correct? Yeah. Okay, so Representative Morales, hang on one second. I just want to make sure that AFA people have the chance. If you have questions, please don't hesitate to put your hand up. Representative Morales.
Thank you very much. And I agree with really everything that's been said. I just wanted to add a little bit about this extensive work that we've all been doing, and it has been many, many hours collaboratively with our committee members and with our commissioners. And we've asked Commissioner Sawchuk, we've asked Commissioner Liberty, about these issues and about the folks that they're seeing in their systems, and if treatment and things like housing and recovery housing, like Representative Pickett was talking about, if those are crucial pieces to public safety, sort of the public safety puzzle. And they say yes. And when we look at our budgets and what we're presented, we don't see anything there to support those crucial pieces. So this is really a call out to the Appropriations Committee and to send a message that we have to see it somewhere. And when I asked Commissioner Sawchuk, do you know if these pieces of funding for treatment, for housing, for supports in the community, for behavioral health, do you know if they exist elsewhere in the budgets of other departments? He wasn't sure. And so whether that's a coordination piece, whether it's actually happening, it's just something we're not seeing. And that goes to Representative Pickett's point that this is really larger than just one committee. And I'll just add that, currently we are a very safe state. We have 500 empty prison beds, and 50 to 60% of our jail beds are empty. And when we talk to our law enforcement, they'll tell us that the folks that they see largely are suffering from substance use disorder, from behavioral health challenges. And so that is the reality of where we're in. So thank you very much for taking the time to listen to all of us.
Thank you, Representative Morales. Any questions from AFA members to our colleagues? Looks like Representative Hymanson.
Yeah, thanks. So, I'm in a different position now, which isn't a policy one, but I will pass on that in Health and Human Services, your buddy committee in this regard with substance use disorder. I was looking through the bills that they will be hearing, and the ones that were heard and were voted out in support of a lot of these different programs, never came because we closed the session. But I see at least 8 bills here that are coming through Health and Human Services that talk about different kinds of services. The ones that we put forward are coming back. So I'm sure we'll see those again. And the strength of recovery houses is not very good. We heard a lot of analysis about recovery houses, and they are not good in long-term recovery. And also fentanyl is showing up in everything now. And so, 3 or 4 years ago when fentanyl wasn't there, it didn't kill as many people. So it's killing more because it's in everything now. So there have been some changes in, the drugs that we see in the state, and they're mixed with methamphetamine. You probably know all of this, but I know Health and Human Services as a policy committee will go through this. And Gordon Smith is a good friend of that committee, as I know he has been with you. So just want to let you know that that conversation happens in that committee.
Thank you, Representative Hymanson. Any other questions from AFA members for our colleagues here today? It looks like Senator DeChambeau wants to make another comment. Any other approach people before I circle back to her? All right, Senator DeChambeau. You're on mute. Is there something?
Thank you. Yep, I think I was pretty close. I said 700,000 was general funds. $650,000 of MIAC is general funds. About 85,000 is from the feds.
Thank you. Any other folks want to weigh in for discussion? All right, well, I want to say thank you very, very much to our co-chairs and all the, clearly you spend a lot of time digging into this and trying to find some consensus and some problem solving. And we really appreciate the efforts of everybody on the committee. And we look forward to your feedback once you have a budget proposal for the juvenile justice proposal, strategic plan. I don't think we have seen that yet as a committee either. So we're looking forward to your feedback on that as well.
Thank you for having us.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good to see everybody.
Appropriations folks, just if you wouldn't mind staying on the line. We have another report back, I think tomorrow, agriculture, conservation and forestry at 1 o'clock. So I'm not sure. Marianne, have we heard back about ACF? Are they planning to attend tomorrow? Do you know?
You mean veterans?
BLA.
Is it VLA? Oh, sorry. Yeah. I had ACF.
Yeah, no, they're not.
They're not.
They're not, no. So we just have 1 o'clock tomorrow.
Okay.
With ACF. And
ACF is coming.
Yes.
Okay, very good. All right, so we will be together again on Zoom tomorrow at 1 o'clock for that. Anything to my co-chair before we finish up? Any questions from anyone?
No, I think you covered everything. Looking forward.